So I've introduced this tool to you. It's a hand masker. I think it's really important. It's a simple tool to use once you understand it, but loading it and making sure that it's working properly, there's some specifics and details about it that we really should get into. So keep in mind, this is a tool that's combining two materials. That's either going to be paper masking or a plastic film masking, and then it's going to combine that with the tape. It's sort of a precision machine in the way that it's going to connect these two in a very precise, specific way with a little bit of overlap. But if we don't get the machine loaded properly, that's not going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and load my paper. It's easier for demonstration, but just keep in mind that the principles that we're doing with the paper are also going to work for this plastic film. So first of all, let's look at the parts really quick. My paper goes on this reel right here, and my tape's going to go on this reel right here. They need to wind out in the same direction. So the tape goes on this outside reel here. We'll go ahead and attach that. Make sure it's headed in the right direction. That's over. And the paper is going to go in on this reel here in the same over direction. And it takes a little bit of effort to get that on, but you want it flat up against this surface here. You don't want it offset, because this is the point that our tape and our masking material are going to overlap. So that's a really critical step. And I'm going to double check that. I like where that is. This part of the machine right here is spring loaded. And as you can see, it is going to touch onto my paper at all times. It's adding pressure there. So as you see here, there's one pin here, and this one does not add any pressure. It's just guiding that tape. So you can actually get this on first or after you get the tape roll on. It doesn't really matter. What this is doing is kind of guiding that tape over onto our paper. And now at this point, I can go ahead and pull some of my paper out. I'm trying to make sure that this pin that has the spring loading action to it, that my tape goes under that as well. So at this point, the machine should start loading and connecting these two parts, and you should see both the tape and the paper come out on this side. At this point, we have to talk about the blade, and I've removed my blade guard here so we can get a better look at what's happening. This is very similar to if you're pulling out aluminum foil out of a roll or saran wrap. There's a serrated edge. This edge is going to cut both my tape and my masking material at the same time. So we're going to get we want a nice pressure on that blade, and it's going to go ahead and tear. And when you're done with it, it should be a fairly straight line. So to really test this tool and make sure it's working properly, we need a surface that we're masking to. I'm going to go ahead and apply this masking to this table, and you'll see it in action. So you're going to pull out a little bit of it. The only part that's going to stick is going to be the tape version. And now, once that's stuck, it's going to hold it, so I can now pull it out. And it's winding out pretty evenly, and it's connecting pretty well. Now I'm going to go ahead and tear it here. And once I've torn it, I can connect it where I want it and go ahead and press it down. I've got a good seal here, and everything from here to here is now going to be protected when I go to paint. Here we are in our classroom again. I've got another mock-up set up here. This is one of our old trim boards, and this one we're going to use to talk about situations that a masker comes in handy. We're going to pull out a hand masker when we need to protect something wider than just a single width of tape. We can add paper to it in this case, and in a lot of interior situations, we're going to prep a room with a hand masker, say a roll of paper and some tape. And I'm going to go over a couple of situations where that will work out well. So I've got, if you can imagine, I've got a doorway here, or a window, doesn't matter. And so you see your sides here and your top of your window or door. And what I want to do is, if say I'm rolling a ceiling, I'm going to be rolling overhead, I'm going to get spatter from that ceiling. So we can set up an awning or a shield on the top edge of this opening, and it's going to protect everything below that awning. A hand masker and some tape is a great way to do that. So let's go ahead and give that a try. So what I really need is just a width pulled off of this tool that will cover that window or door. And I can go ahead and do that and cut it right there. And this can be used. I'll go ahead now and place it on my top edge here. And if it rolls over the sides a little bit, that's fine. If I've got a situation here where I have a small hole in it, I can always tape over that. And what I have here is now a piece of masking material with tape on it that's going to protect everything below it as I work above it. Moving on to the exterior of a house, there's several situations in that case where a hand masker comes in handy. I've loaded my masker with a curtain of plastic film now, and I'm going to show you how you can encapsulate certain details on the outside of a house. And typically when you're masking on the outside of a house, it's going to be doors, windows, any feature that you don't want to be sprayed. It's a very common thing to spray the exterior of a house, and so your masker is going to really speed that process up, protect any surfaces from that high velocity paint that's coming out of your spray gun. And this, in this case, you need to make sure that all of your seams, joints, everything is very sealed up. So I'm going to demonstrate or mock up a couple different situations here. If we can imagine that this area here is a feature on the house or some type of object on the house that is proud or sticks forward from the main surface of the house, we want to protect this. So what we can do is to use a masker to completely close this off. So what we'll do first is go ahead and, just like with our apron on the inside, we need a width of masking material that will completely cover the front edge of that opening. And I'm going to go ahead and measure it out. That is going to work just fine. So I'll go ahead and use this to mask off this area. My film here that I'm using, and I'm going to actually run this just like I would if I was just using tape, run it right up to my edge. My curtain here is actually 72 inches long. This works great for different widths and sizes of windows. Of course, on this small area, I don't need all of that length. So I have a couple of options. If it's a windy day, we might have to tack this down, but as we're doing this now, we can now go ahead and mask this off on the sides. And I need to make sure that I get this edge tight here. And then we can go ahead and roll it over on our plastic. We've got a good edge, and for a really nice final pass, we can blade press all of this down so that we don't get any paint bleed on any of those edges. So that area here is effectively ready to be sprayed. Another situation you'll find in an exterior masking job would be an inset panel. So here we have something that sticks forward of the surface. We're going to reverse that situation, and we have an inset panel here. And I have 4 pieces of trim. It's creating this panel or area on the inside. My goal here is to paint only the trim and the outside of this area, but not any of this inside space. And I want my masking to end up right here on this line. This is very common if you look at windows on the exterior. Most of the time your window material is a different material than the exterior of the house or the building, and therefore it needs to be protected. Most of the time window materials don't need paint at all. So we're trying to keep the paint off of the window, whether it's a vinyl window or an aluminum window or maybe even a wood window. And so the masker works great for this too. So we'll go ahead, start here, and we're going to run We also need a width of material that's going to carry from one end of this space to the other. I'm going to leave it about, say, 1/8 of an inch shy of this inside edge. That's going to allow me to go ahead and use some more tape to hold this down on the inside. So now I'm going to pull out as much as I need to also stop right at about 1/8 to 1/4 shy of my other edge. I'll go ahead and tear that off. Now I'm ready to go ahead and stick my top edge in. And I'm trying to find a nice tight connection to that line right there on the inside. So once I get that done, I can now, as before, go ahead and pull this film down. Remember, this is still my 72-inch film curtain, so it's going to be able to extend down as far as I need it to go. And I'm only going to pull it down as far as I need it. So now I need tape on all of these other sides, both the left and the right side and the bottom. I'll start on this side. And I'm going to go ahead, place that tape in there nice and tight, making sure that we're getting good contact with not only the film, but also the material that we're trying to stick the film to. And when we get down here, we can always put our blade in nice and tight and tear it. We get a nice clean line there. Make sure that you have good adhesion with everything. Give it a good press. And now we'll move on to the right side. So now we can work this edge. I need a nice tight corner up here. Nice clean corner. I'm going to work this tape down. I'm looking for my overlap here between my plastic, and I want enough of that surface in the back there to connect to. And as I get down to my other corner, I'm going to use my blade, and I need to make sure I have enough of this film down here. We're ready for the bottom edge. And we can go ahead and run this run. So there you have it. We now have a window masked, so we're ready to spray. This video is a production of Trade Skills U, all rights reserved. If you provide instruction in the construction trades and have a need for videos like these, please contact us at tradeskillsu.com.